I purchased this red Seamaster Aqua Terra about 4 months ago from the same authorized dealer that I got my Speedmaster Professional. The red terracotta dial is by far the best looking out of all the options. I had first asked about this watch a year ago, but it took them this long to get the first watch in. And these are still in short supply because of how difficult it is to manufacture that unique red dial. They're still not available to order online, and from what I hear, they're not available in the display cases either. The red dial is, of course, the standout feature of this watch. It's just not very common to see. I had originally wanted to get the Oyster Perpetual 36mm with the red dial, but I missed the boat when they discontinued that. The hands and hour markers are coated in rhodium, which is corrosion resistant. It's used in high end jewelry, and it's even more expensive and difficult to deal with than white gold. The case is a high polish design, and the bracelet only adds to that high polish. It's made of three links across, it has a mild taper, and it somewhat resembles the Rolex President bracelet. One of the main drawbacks is that there's no micro adjustment to the bracelet, but I'll also say it's very difficult to size this bracelet on your own. There's a small bar holding each link to the next, and it's capped off by a tiny screw on each side. And these screws are very, very tiny and difficult to put back on once they're taken off. So it took me about 45 minutes to size this bracelet on my own at home. I would have been much better off letting the authorized dealer do it for me. It has a butterfly clasp, which requires a two-step process of opening the clasp. It does feel secure, and the lack of micro adjustment allows it to have a more seamless and streamlined design. Although not necessary, I think having the transparent case back adds a touch of elegance to this watch. On the back is a transparent case back which shows off a nicely finished movement. It's a highly accurate movement and it's META certified. You can look up the serial number of your watch online and find out exactly how this watch performed on its testing. Water resistant to 150 meters, which is very respectable, and magnetically resistant up to 15,000 Gauss. And it has a 55-hour power reserve with an automatic movement. Overall, this has a nice, clean, simple design with a striking red dial. The dial is finished in a sunray pattern, which gives it a dynamic look, but it also has a hint of orange with bright sunlight, which I don't particularly like. I think I like it better when viewed at an angle where the sunray finish disappears and it turns into a more matte dial with a darker red color. Having this still be in the Seamaster line seems a little bit outdated to me. It seems more like a dress watch compared to a diver watch. The closest thing I can compare it to is a Rolex Datejust. So after the break, I'll show some more wrist shots and compare this to the Wimbledon Datejust. The slate gray dial of the Datejust is another interesting design, not as eye-catching as the red dial Aqua Terra, but it does have a pop of color with that green on the Roman numerals. It's not extremely difficult to get from the authorized dealer. I think the fluted bezel is a more popular choice, but I found this watch sitting in the display case about 1 year ago. The 36mm Datejust has always been the best size for my wrist, but the 38mm of the Aqua Terra is just slightly larger. I think both of these fit well on my wrist, with the Omega Aqua Terra just adding a little bit more presence and girth on the wrist. Besides the case diameter, there's some more differences between these case designs. On the Omega, it has that lyre lug appearance, which gives it a more rounded look, a more bulbous look to the watch head. And the lug to lug distance between these two watches is not that very different. The Rolex Datejust just has a more simple case design, but it also has a more elongated look to it. And as far as the bracelets, the winner is still the Rolex. None of Omega's bracelets can overtake the Jubilee or the Oyster bracelet. And the Rolex clasp is still the best in the business. I like having this Oyster clasp on the Datejust instead of the hidden crown clasp. It has this hinged lever at the end, which keeps it secure, and that needs to be opened to open the clasp. Inside, the solid steel wings are very sturdy, and it has that easy link extension to give you an extra 5 millimeters of adjustment. The Rolex Datejust will always be a classic, and I think this design has more staying power than the Aqua Terra. It's always recognizable as a Rolex. This dial color is a little bit more versatile. It's easy to wear. The bracelet is very comfortable and easy to put on and off. While the red dial will give the Omega a casual look and more sporty look, this Rolex Datejust can still be worn in formal situations. After the break, we'll come back and discuss the final conclusions and the final winner. So, which one is the better watch? This Datejust or the Aqua Terra? The Rolex Datejust is more expensive, but putting price aside, it has an excellent design case. It's very classic and fits well on my wrist. The color of the dial is more conservative, but there is a splash of color of green with the Roman numerals. And the Jubilee bracelet is superior, and it has a robust clasp, which is secure and easy to use. The Oyster clasp has three micro adjustments, and it also has that Easy Link extension, which I find is helpful to have. And even the links are easier to remove or add on. But the Omega Aqua Terra has that beautifully colored dial, which is unique and striking at the same time. It also has a date function, but without a Cyclops window, it stays out of the way, and being placed at 6 o'clock, it retains the symmetry of the watch face. The 38 millimeter diameter gives a slightly more presence on my wrist, but it still fits on my 6.5-inch wrist. You could also argue that the Omega has the better movement, and it has the transparent case back to show off the finishing. But the biggest weakness is the clasp, and it was for this reason that I didn't wear this more often in the summer. It fits fine on my wrist, but when my wrist swells, it does get tight on my wrist without the option of a micro adjustment. And I did start wearing this more frequently in the fall. So next summer, it might be a good idea to put a strap on this watch. That's something to think about. And the other negative is the lack of availability. From what I hear, these are still not readily available in the display cases. My Omega Boutique told me that the delay was not due to the redesigned date window. It was because the style color was more difficult to manufacture than they expected. So in my case, the Omega was actually more difficult to get than the Rolex. Final judgment, I still haven't decided which one is the better watch. It's a close call, and I think I just need more time to handle the Omega.